Jinsu Park walked through the crystal corridors of Galactic University, his heavy human footsteps echoing against the smooth walls. Other students floated, glided, or bubbled past him, but none walked quite like he did. His boots made solid contact with the floor in a way that seemed foreign here on Serenitas Prime. The university was the most beautiful place Jinsu had ever seen. Towers of living crystal reached toward the purple sky, and gardens floated in the air without any visible support. Everything glowed with soft, peaceful light. It was nothing like the dangerous world he came from. Jinsu was one of only 12 humans in the entire university. 50,000 students from across the galaxy studied here, but humans were still rare. Most aliens thought of his species as dangerous primitives from a death world. They whispered when he passed by. He entered his advanced galactic ethics classroom and took his usual seat in the back. Professor Veltar, an ancient Zephyrian made of living crystal, was already preparing for the lesson. The professor's body caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Mina, a Cathara student, sat near Jinsu. She looked like a giant praying mantis, but with soft, intelligent eyes. Her forearms moved nervously as she arranged her note-taking devices. She had been trying to make friends with Jinsu for weeks, but she was too shy to talk much. "Good morning, Jinsu," she whispered, her translator device making her clicking language into standard galactic. "Morning, Mina," Jinsu replied quietly. He smiled at her, and she turned a soft green color that meant happiness in her species. Across the room, Shard of Dawn sparkled as she settled into her special crystalline chair. She was another Zephyrian, but much younger than the professor. Her body was clear blue crystal that caught light like a prism. She always sat perfectly still during lectures, absorbing knowledge through some process Jinsu did not understand. Near the front of the room, Bubble floated in a containment suit that let her gaseous form stay together. She was a Nebulan, barely adult by her species standards. Her purple gas swirled with excitement as she waited for class to begin. She was the friendliest student in the class, and often tried to include Jinsu in group discussions. Professor Veltar began the lecture about peacekeeping in galactic society. Jinsu listened, but found himself distracted by how safe everyone felt. None of his classmates ever looked around the room for exits. They never checked for potential weapons or hiding places. They simply sat and learned, trusting completely that nothing bad would happen. On Earth, children learned to be alert by age 5. They watched for predators, dangerous weather, and unstable ground. But these students had grown up on worlds where the biggest danger was perhaps a mild disagreement over academic theories. The foundation of galactic peace, Professor Veltar was saying, rests on our shared commitment to nonviolence. For over 3,000 years, civilized species have resolved conflicts through discussion and compromise. Jinsu shifted in his seat. He had studied galactic history and knew this was mostly true. But he also knew there were still pirates, criminals, and hostile species at the edges of civilized space. These peaceful students seemed to forget that danger still existed. During the break, Bubble drifted over to Jinsu's desk. Her translator made her voice sound like wind chimes. "Jinsu, would you like to join our study group tonight? We are discussing the ethics of intervention in primitive societies." Mina clicked softly, which meant she was interested in his answer. Shard of Dawn's crystal body turned slightly toward them, showing she was listening too. "Sure," Jinsu said. "Where do you want to meet?" "Where do you want to meet?" "The Peace Garden near the main library," Bubble said happily. "It is the most beautiful place on campus at night." Jinsu nodded, though he privately thought meeting in an isolated garden at night was not the best idea. On Earth, people met in well-lit public places with multiple exits, but he was trying to fit in and make friends. As the class resumed, Jinsu noticed something his classmates missed. Professor Veltar's assistant had not shown up today. The security screen that usually displayed campus safety updates was flickering strangely, and there had been news reports about an escaped prisoner from a maximum security facility 3 systems away. These details meant nothing to his peaceful classmates, but Jinsu's human instincts were telling him something was wrong. On Earth, predators often struck when their prey felt most secure. He tried to push the feeling away. Serenitas Prime was the safest world in 3 star systems. The university had gone over 200 years without a single, violent crime. The local security force was mostly there to help lost tourists and direct traffic during graduation ceremonies. But Jinsu could not shake the feeling that came from millions of years of human evolution. His ancestors had survived by staying alert, by noticing when something was not quite right. Those instincts had kept humanity alive on a world full of predators, natural disasters, and deadly weather. Professor Veltar was discussing a case study about peaceful contact with a newly discovered species when the lights flickered. Everyone looked up with mild curiosity, but Jinsu tensed. Power systems on Serenitas Prime were incredibly reliable. Probably just routine maintenance, Professor Veltar said calmly. But Jinsu noticed the old Zephyrian's crystal body had dimmed slightly. Even the professor felt something was not quite right. The lecture continued, but Jinsu found himself scanning the room more carefully. He noted that the classroom had only 2 exits, the main door and an emergency exit that probably led to the service corridors. The windows were too high to be useful for escape. If something happened, 37 students and 1 professor would have very limited options. He wondered if he was being paranoid. His human classmates back on Earth would understand his caution, but here it seemed foolish and primitive. These advanced alien civilizations had moved beyond the need for constant vigilance. Mina noticed his tension. "Are you feeling well, Jinsu? You seem worried about something." Jinsu looked at her kind, innocent face and felt the weight of being different. How could he explain that every human carried the genetic memory of being hunted? That his species had learned to survive by always expecting danger? "I am fine," he said quietly. Just thinking about the lecture. But deep in his mind, ancient human instincts whispered warnings that his peaceful alien friends could never understand. Something was coming, and when it arrived, their beautiful, safe world would discover why humans were called Deathworlders. The classroom door exploded inward with a sound like thunder. Pieces of crystal and metal scattered across the floor as a massive figure stepped through the smoking entrance. Every student in the room froze in terror except for Jinsu, who dropped low in his seat and assessed the threat. The intruder was Saurian, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shifted from dark green to black. Cybernetic implants covered half his face, and his left arm had been completely replaced with mechanical parts. He carried 2 plasma weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "Nobody moves, nobody dies," the Saurian said in a voice like grinding metal. His mechanical eye swept the room, cataloging targets. "My name is Kexlan, and I need transportation off this pathetic, peaceful planet." Professor Veltar stepped forward with the dignity of his ancient species. His crystal body glowed brighter as he tried to project calm. "There is no need for violence, friend. If you require assistance, we can discuss." The plasma blast caught the professor in the chest, shattering crystal fragments across the front of the classroom. Professor Veltar collapsed, his light fading to a dim flicker. He was alive, but badly injured. Min-Ah made a sound like breaking glass. Bubble's gaseous form contracted with fear. Shard of Dawn went completely clear, trying to make herself invisible. Across the room, other students began to shake, cry, or simply stare in shock. None of them had ever seen real violence before. Kexlan smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Good. Now everyone understands the situation. I have disabled your security systems and blocked all communications. Your peaceful little world has no real defenses, because you never needed them." Jinsu remained perfectly still, but his mind was racing. He cataloged everything about their attacker. The plasma weapons were military grade, probably stolen from a battle cruiser. The cybernetic arm would give Kexlan enhanced strength and speed. But the implants were old models, and Jinsu could see stress fractures in the metal. More importantly, Kexlan was positioning himself poorly. He stood in the center of the room where he could see all the exits, but that also made him vulnerable from multiple directions. He was confident because his victims were helpless prey who had never fought back against anything. He had never dealt with a human before. "I need a shuttle and clearance to leave this system," Kexlan continued. "Your university administration will provide these things, or I will start killing students, starting with the young ones." His mechanical eye fixed on Bubble, who was the smallest and youngest in the class. The Nebulan's gaseous form was barely holding together from fear. "Please," Bubble whispered through her translator. "I have done nothing wrong." Kexlan raised his weapon toward her. "Wrong place, wrong time, little cloud." "Wait," Jinsu said, standing up slowly. Every eye in the room turned to him, including Kexlan's natural and mechanical ones. "The human speaks," Kexlan said with amusement. "I heard there were Deathworlders studying here." "How interesting." Jinsu kept his hands visible but ready. "If you want a valuable hostage, take me instead. I am from Earth. My government will pay more for my release than for any of these others." This was not true, but Kexlan would not know that. Jinsu was counting on the criminal's greed and his curiosity about humans. Kexlan lowered his weapon slightly. "Earth. I have heard stories about your world. They say it is filled with predators and poison, storms that can level cities, and gravity that would crush most species." "All true," Jinsu said calmly. "My people are not easy to kill." "Neither am I," Kexlan replied. But Jinsu could see interest in his organic eye. "You are not afraid like the others." Jinsu looked around the room at his terrified classmates. Mina was trembling so hard her translator was making static noises. The other students had pressed themselves against the walls, trying to become as small as possible. "Fear is a tool," Jinsu said. "It keeps you alive if you use it right. But panic gets you killed." Kexlan laughed, a sound like breaking machinery. "Spoken like a true predator. Tell me, human, what do you see when you look at me?" Jinsu studied the criminal for a moment. "I see someone who is injured and desperate. Your cybernetics are failing, which means you cannot get proper medical treatment. You are running from something bigger and stronger than you are. And you chose the sophist target you could find because you know you would not survive a real fight." The smile disappeared from Kexlan's face. "Careful, Deathworlder. I have killed beings much larger than you." "I am sure you have," Jinsu replied. "But they were probably not expecting it." Surprise is a powerful weapon. As he spoke, Jinsu was making eye contact with his classmates. Most of them were too frightened to notice, but Mina was watching him carefully. So was Shard of Dawn, whose crystal form was slowly regaining some color. He needed to buy time and gather information. More importantly, he needed to get his friends ready for what might come next. "What happened to your arm?" Jinsu asked, nodding toward Kexlan's cybernetic limb. "Prison fight," Kexlan said proudly. "And the eye?" "Same fight." Jinsu nodded, as if impressed, but he was actually learning about Kexlan's fighting style. The criminal liked to get close and use brute force. The cybernetic arm would be his primary weapon in hand-to-hand combat. "How did you escape?" Jinsu continued. Kexlan's chest swelled with pride. "I am not just strong, human. I am smart. I learned their security systems, found their weaknesses, and struck when they least expected it." This confirmed what Jinsu suspected. Kexlan was intelligent and technical, but he was also arrogant. He liked to talk about his accomplishments, which meant he could be manipulated through his ego. "Impressive," Jinsu said. "Most criminals get caught because they are not smart enough to plan properly." "I am not most criminals," Kexlan replied. I have been planning this escape for 3 years. Jinsu glanced at the emergency exit and saw that Mina had noticed his look. She was still terrified, but she was thinking again, instead of just panicking. That was progress. Shard of Dawn had moved slightly closer to the light controls for the classroom. Bubble was slowly expanding her form again, which meant she was calming down enough to think clearly. His friends were beginning to recover from their initial shock. Now Jinsu needed to keep Kexlan talking while they prepared for whatever came next. 3 years is a long time to plan, Jinsu said. You must have considered many different escape routes. Of course, Kexlan said. But this world was perfect. No real security. No weapons. No one who knows how to fight. Just soft, peaceful creatures who have forgotten that the galaxy can be dangerous. Jinsu nodded slowly. Yes, they have forgotten. But some of us remember. Something in his tone made Kexlan look at him more carefully. The criminal seemed to realize that the human was not nearly as helpless as the other students. The hunt was about to begin. Kexlan stared at Jinsu with new interest. The criminal had expected fear, pleading, or perhaps anger. Instead, he found himself facing a human who seemed almost calm. It was unsettling in a way he could not explain. Tell me about your world, Deathworlder, Kexlan said, keeping his weapons ready but not directly aimed. I have heard Earth breeds strong fighters. Jinsu remained standing, but relaxed his posture slightly. He needed Kexlan to see him as an equal rather than a threat. Earth is not kind to the weak. Our planet has acid rain that can melt metal. Storms that throw vehicles into the air like toys. Animals that can kill with a single bite or claw. Sounds like my kind of place, Kexlan said with genuine interest. Most humans do not survive to adulthood, Jinsu continued. Those who do are very hard to kill. While he spoke, Jinsu was using hand signals he hoped his classmates would understand. A slight movement of his fingers toward the emergency exit. A small nod toward the light controls. Basic gestures that might mean nothing to Kexlan, but could save lives if his friends were paying attention. Mina's compound eyes tracked his movements carefully. Her species was naturally good at detecting small motions, and she was beginning to understand that Jinsu was communicating with them. I once saw a human fight 3 Korvan warriors at the same time, Kexlan said. He won, but barely. Korvans are strong but predictable, Jinsu replied. They rely too much on size and not enough on tactics. This was partially true. But Jinsu was also testing Kexlan's knowledge. The criminal seemed to know about various species and their fighting capabilities, which meant he had probably encountered many different types of opponents. What about Saurians? Kexlan asked with a dangerous smile. How would a human fight one of my people? Jinsu pretended to consider the question seriously. Saurians are apex predators. Strong, fast, intelligent. A human would have to use strategy rather than brute force. Strategy like what? Hit and run tactics. Use the environment as a weapon. Attack weaknesses rather than strengths, Jinsu said, deliberately keeping his answer general. Kexlan nodded approvingly. You think like a warrior, not like these soft academics. Behind the criminal, Shard of Dawn had moved into position near the light controls. Her crystal form was difficult to see when she wanted to be invisible, and Kexlan had not noticed her movement. Bubble was slowly expanding her gaseous form, spreading thin across the ceiling. To most observers, it would look like she was just afraid and losing cohesion. But Jinsu realized she was positioning herself to access the ventilation system. His classmates were smarter than Kexlan realized. They were learning to work as a team. You know, Kexlan said thoughtfully. I could use someone like you. Once I get off this planet, I will need crew members who can handle themselves in a fight. You want to recruit me? Jinsu asked. Why not? You are wasted here, studying peaceful philosophy with creatures who have never seen real violence. Join me, and I will show you what real combat looks like. Jinsu pretended to consider the offer. What about my classmates? What about them? They are nothing to you. Soft, weak aliens who probably look down on you for being from a primitive world. They are my friends, Jinsu said quietly. Kexlan laughed harshly. Friends? They are prey animals. Human. You are a predator like me. We should not waste our time protecting the weak. On Earth, Jinsu said slowly, predators that hunt in packs are stronger than those who hunt alone. These creatures are not packmates. They are food. Jinsu felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. You are wrong about them, and you are wrong about me. Something in his tone made Kexlan step back slightly. The criminal's cybernetic eye whirred as it adjusted focus, trying to read Jinsu's expression. Explain, Kexlan demanded. Humans do not just fight for themselves, Jinsu said. We fight hardest when we are protecting others. My friends may not be warriors, but they are not prey either. Prove it, Kexlan said, raising his weapon toward Mina again. Show me how hard you fight when one of your friends is about to die. Mina made a soft clicking sound of fear, but she did not run. Instead, she looked directly at Jinsu and gave him a small nod. She was ready to follow his lead. You do not want to do that, Jinsu warned. Why not? What will you do? Human. You have no weapons, no armor, no backup. I have cybernetic enhancements and military-grade plasma rifles. How exactly do you plan to stop me? Jinsu smiled, and for the first time since entering the classroom, Kexlan felt a chill of uncertainty. You made one mistake, Jinsu said. What mistake? You assumed I was alone. At that moment, Shard of Dawn activated the classroom's emergency lighting system. The room erupted in brilliant, strobing light that overloaded Kexlan's cybernetic eye. He roared in pain and confusion, trying to adjust his visual sensors. Bubble, who had spread herself across the ventilation system, began releasing a harmless but disorienting gas that she had produced from her own body chemistry. The air became thick and difficult to see through. Mina and the other Kithara students began moving with their natural speed, creating confusing motion in Kexlan's peripheral vision. Their forearms made it impossible to track how many opponents he was facing, but Jinsu was already moving. He had spent the entire conversation studying Kexlan's positioning, weapon placement, and cybernetic limitations. Now, he put that knowledge to use. Instead of attacking directly, Jinsu grabbed a crystal fragment from Professor Veltar's damaged body and threw it at the emergency exit controls. The door opened, giving his classmates an escape route. Run, he shouted. But most of his friends stayed to help. Kexlan fired wildly, trying to hit targets he could barely see through the strobing lights and gas. His shots went wide, melting holes in the walls but missing the students. Jinsu used the chaos to get closer. He needed to disable those weapons before Kexlan adapted to the situation. You think you can hunt me, human? Kexlan bellowed. I am the apex predator here. No, Jinsu said as he closed the distance. You are just another bully who picks on those weaker than yourself. On Earth, we have a word for creatures like you. What word? Kexlan demanded, trying to target Jinsu through his damaged sensors. Jinsu smiled grimly as he prepared to show this alien what it really meant to face a human who was protecting his pack. Extinct. Jinsu moved like death itself had come to the classroom. Every instinct bred into humanity over millions of years of evolution took control. He was no longer a peaceful university student, but a predator defending his pack. Kexlan spun toward him, plasma rifle tracking, but Jinsu had already changed direction. On Earth, humans learned early that survival meant never moving in straight lines when something was hunting them. The human dove behind a row of desks as plasma bolts seared the air above him. The energy blasts left molten scars in the crystal walls, filling the room with acrid smoke. You cannot hide forever, Deathworlder. Kexlan roared, his cybernetic eye cycling through different visual modes to penetrate Bubbles' concealing gas. But Jinsu was not hiding. He was hunting. While Kexlan focused on where Jinsu had been, Mina struck from the side. Her forearms moved faster than the Saurian could track, grabbing loose equipment and hurling it at his head. The projectiles bounced harmlessly off his scales, but they forced him to divide his attention. Shard of Dawn maintained the strobing lights while moving to a new position. Her crystalline body reflected and scattered the light beams, creating false images that confused Kexlan's targeting systems even more. Other students who had not fled were finding their own ways to help. A group of Aquarian students released moisture into the air, making the floor slippery. Several Zephyrian students coordinated their light-bending abilities to create optical illusions. Kexlan had expected to face one human and several cowering prey animals. Instead, he found himself fighting a coordinated team that was adapting to his capabilities in real time. Impossible, he snarled, firing at shadows and reflections. These are peaceful species. They do not know how to fight. They are learning, Jinsu said, from a new position behind an overturned table. Humans are very good teachers. He had been moving constantly, using furniture and debris as cover while getting closer to his target. Each movement brought him nearer to Kexlan, while forcing the criminal to waste ammunition on empty positions. Kexlan's cybernetic arm swept across a row of desks, smashing them to pieces. His enhanced strength was formidable, but it was also making him overconfident. He was using brute force when he needed precision. Jinsu saw his opportunity. As Kexlan destroyed another desk, Jinsu rolled forward and came up directly behind him. The human grabbed a sharp piece of broken crystal and drove it toward the connection point where cybernetic met flesh. Kexlan's reflexes saved him from serious injury, but the crystal scored a deep cut across his shoulder. He spun around with a backhand that would have shattered a normal human's skull. But Jinsu had already dropped and rolled away. The massive fist passed through empty air. You are fast for a Deathworlder, Kexlan admitted, green blood seeping from his wound. But I have fought faster opponents. Speed is not everything, Jinsu replied. Sometimes you need to be smart. As he spoke, Jinsu was leading Kexlan toward a specific spot in the classroom. The criminal followed, thinking he was driving his prey into a corner. He did not notice that Jinsu was positioning him directly under one of the floating crystal formations that provided light to the room. Mina saw what Jinsu was planning. Her compound eyes tracked the angle he needed, and she began moving to provide support. Shard of Dawn noticed too, and started concentrating her light manipulation on the crystal formation above Kexlan. Enough games, Kexlan shouted. He raised both weapons and prepared to fill the entire area with plasma fire. I will burn this whole corner of the room. Now, Jinsu shouted. Shard of Dawn overloaded the crystal formation above Kexlan, causing it to explode in a shower of sharp fragments. At the same moment, Mina used all four of her arms to hurl a heavy piece of equipment at the criminal's legs. Kexlan stumbled as the equipment hit him, looking up just in time to see several 100 pounds of crystal falling toward his head. He tried to dodge, but the crystal fragments struck his cybernetic eye and damaged optical sensors. Half-blinded, Kexlan fired wildly. One plasma bolt came close enough to Jinsu to singe his hair, but most went wide. The criminal was operating on instinct now, rather than strategy. Jinsu pressed his advantage. He had noticed that Kexlan's cybernetic arm moved slightly slower when the Saurian was injured or stressed. The artificial limb was powerful, but not perfectly integrated with his nervous system. Moving faster than he ever had before, Jinsu closed the distance and grabbed Kexlan's weapon arm, using the criminal's own momentum against him. He threw Kexlan toward the damaged wall, where Professor Veltar's energy blast had weakened the crystal structure. Kexlan hit the wall hard, and cracks spread through the crystal. But he was far from defeated. His cybernetic arm grabbed Jinsu around the waist and lifted him off the ground. I will crush you like an insect, human, Kexlan snarled, squeezing with mechanical strength that could bend steel. Jin-Soo felt his ribs creak under the pressure. Black spots appeared in his vision as the cybernetic arm compressed his lungs. But he had one advantage that Kexlan did not expect. Humans were notorious for fighting long past the point where other species would surrender. Instead of trying to break free, Jin-Soo grabbed the plasma rifle that was still attached to Kexlan's other arm. He turned it toward the ceiling and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt struck the crystal supports, holding up the emergency lighting system. Heavy fixtures crashed down around them, and sparks flew as power conduits were severed. In the sudden darkness, Jin-Soo used the distraction to break Kexlan's grip. He rolled away, gasping for air, as the criminal thrashed in the dark trying to locate him. "Where are you, coward?" Kexlan bellowed. "Right here," Jin-Soo said quietly. When Kexlan turned toward the sound, he found Jin-Soo holding the second plasma rifle, which had been knocked loose in the fall. The human's finger was on the trigger, and the weapon was aimed directly at Kexlan's head. "Surrender," Jin-Soo said simply. For a moment, the classroom was absolutely silent, except for the sound of settling debris and Jin-Soo's labored breathing. Kexlan stared at the human with his one remaining organic eye, finally understanding what it meant to be prey. "You would not shoot an unarmed opponent," Kexlan said. "You are too civilized." Jin-Soo's expression never changed. "I am civilized, but I am also human. And humans do whatever is necessary to protect their pack." Something in his voice convinced Kexlan that the Deathworlder meant every word. "I surrender," the criminal said quietly. But even as he spoke, his cybernetic arm was slowly reaching for a hidden weapon. Some predators, Jin-Soo realized, never learned when to stop hunting. This time, they would. Jin-Soo saw the hidden weapon emerging from Kexlan's cybernetic arm a split second before it cleared its concealed holster. Time seemed to slow as his enhanced human reflexes took over. The plasma rifle in his hands bucked once, and Kexlan's mechanical limbs sparked and went dead. The criminal collapsed, his cybernetic systems overloaded by the precisely aimed shot. He was alive but completely disabled, his enhanced strength reduced to that of an injured, aging Saurian. "It is over," Jin-Soo said quietly, keeping the weapon trained on Kexlan while his classmates slowly emerged from their hiding places. Mina approached carefully, her forearms trembling with leftover adrenaline. "Jin-Soo, you are hurt." He looked down and realized she was right. His shirt was torn and bloody from where Kexlan's cybernetic arm had squeezed him. Several cuts from crystal fragments marked his face and arms. But he was alive, and more importantly, so were his friends. Shard of Dawn rushed to Professor Veltar, whose crystal body was slowly regaining its glow. The old Zephyrian was badly damaged but conscious. "My students," Professor Veltar whispered through a damaged voice projector. "Are they safe?" We are all safe," Bubbles said, her gaseous form swirling with relief as she returned to normal density. Jin-Soo protected us. Other students began gathering around, looking at their human classmate with new understanding. The being they had seen as a curiosity from a dangerous world had just saved all their lives. Security forces finally arrived, having restored their systems after Kexlan's sabotage. They found a classroom full of shaken but unharmed students, an injured professor, and an unconscious criminal surrounded by the debris of what had clearly been an intense battle. "What happened here?" asked Captain Zenth, the Aquarian security chief. "Kexlan took us hostage," Mina explained. "He was going to kill us, but Jin-Soo fought him." Captain Zenth looked at the human with surprise. "You subdued an enhanced Saurian criminal by yourself?" "Not by myself," Jin-Soo corrected. "My classmates helped. We worked together." This was not entirely accurate, but Jin-Soo wanted to make sure his friends received credit for their courage. They had overcome lifetimes of peaceful conditioning to stand and fight when it mattered. As medical teams arrived to treat the wounded, News of the incident began to spread across campus. Students who had grown up believing that violence was a relic of the primitive past were forced to confront the reality that danger still existed in their safe universe. Over the following days, Jin-Soo found himself at the center of attention he had never wanted. News reporters from across the galaxy wanted to interview the human who had defeated a cybernetically enhanced criminal with his bare hands and the help of peaceful alien students. "How did you know what to do?" asked a crystalline journalist during one interview. "Humans learn to fight from the time we are children," Jin-Soo explained. "Not because we want to, but because our world taught us we had to. Every human carries the instincts of 100,000 generations who survived by protecting each other." "And your classmates? How were they able to help when their species have no warrior traditions?" Jin-Soo smiled. "Courage is not about being a warrior. It is about doing what needs to be done when people you care about are in danger. My friends showed more bravery than most soldiers I have heard about." The interview was broadcast across dozens of worlds, and the response was immediate. Other peaceful civilizations began to reconsider their assumptions about Deathworlders and the value of diversity in their populations. More importantly to Jin-Soo, his relationships with his classmates had changed completely. Where once there had been curiosity mixed with fear, now there was genuine friendship and mutual respect. Minna no longer hesitated to talk with him, and often asked about Earth culture and human customs. Shard of Dawn included him in her study groups, valuing his different perspective on galactic history and ethics. Bubble frequently visited him in the medical center while he recovered, bringing him news from their classes and sharing gossip about campus life. Professor Veltar, whose crystal body bore permanent scars from the attack, incorporated the incident into his curriculum. His advanced galactic ethics class now included discussions about the moral complexity of violence when used to protect others. "Violence should always be a last resort," the professor would tell his students. "But when evil threatens the innocent, sometimes good people must be willing to fight. The challenge is knowing when that moment has come and ensuring that we do not become the very thing we fight against." 3 weeks after the attack, Jin-Soo was finally cleared to return to regular classes. As he walked through the crystal corridors of the university, he noticed that other students no longer whispered when they saw him. Instead, many nodded respectfully or offered quiet words of gratitude. The university had also made changes. Security was increased, emergency protocols were revised, and new courses were offered on threat assessment and crisis management. The peaceful world of Serenitas Prime had learned that safety required vigilance, not just good intentions. But the biggest change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Reports of the incident had reached the Galactic Council, and humans were invited to serve as security consultants for peaceful worlds throughout civilized space. "We have been wrong about your species," admitted Counselor Vexta during an official ceremony. "We saw your capacity for violence and assumed you were primitive. We failed to understand that your strength comes from using that capacity to protect others." Jin-Soo accepted the honor on behalf of humanity, but he made sure to mention his alien friends who had stood with him when it mattered most. "Humans are strong," he said in his speech, "but we are strongest when we fight alongside others who share our values. My classmates proved that courage is not something you are born with. It is something you choose when the moment comes to act." Later that evening, Jin-Soo sat in the Peace Garden with his study group, discussing their assignment for Professor Veltar's class. The topic was the ethics of intervention in conflicts between different moral systems. "It seems more complicated than it used to," Bubble mused, her purple form swirling thoughtfully in the evening light. "Most things do once you really understand them," Minna replied, her translator giving her clicking words a contemplative tone. Shard of Dawn sparkled as she processed new ideas. "Perhaps that is the point of education. To help us see the complexity in what seems simple, and find the simple truths hidden in complexity." Jin-Soo smiled as he listened to his friends. They had all been changed by their shared experience, but they had not lost their essential natures. They were still thoughtful, peaceful beings who preferred discussion to conflict. The difference was that now they understood the value of having someone willing to fight for the things they could not defend themselves. As the alien sun set over Serenitas Prime, Jin-Soo reflected on how much his life had changed. He was no longer an outsider studying among aliens. He was a bridge between worlds, helping peaceful civilizations understand that strength and wisdom could coexist. His human nature would always be part of him, carrying the genetic memory of ancestors who had clawed their way to the top of Earth's food chain. But here, among friends who had learned to value that strength rather than fear it, he had found a new purpose. The Deathworlder had found his place in the galaxy, not as a conqueror, but as a protector. And in doing so, he had helped his alien friends discover that they too could be heroes when the situation demanded it. The classroom had been rebuilt, stronger than before. But the real reconstruction had been in the hearts and minds of those who had learned that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice defended by those brave enough to stand for what was right.